The monitor market is split between professional work screens and gaming models. The first are characterized by high resolution and perfect color reproduction, but these advantages come at the cost of a meager 60 Hz refresh rate and a choppy image during gameplay. On the other hand, gaming models mainly feature a fast panel and support for technologies like G-Sync and FreeSync, which ensure synchronization of the graphics card with the screen's refresh rate. And believe me, this really improves comfort in computer games. However, many gaming monitors have terrible color reproduction, and even if the colors are acceptable, the blacks don't really look like true black. More like grayish. That's why, after switching to an OLED TV and seeing how the picture can really look, I decided that this is the only right way now, and liquid crystal displays have already reached the limit of their capabilities. But as it turns out, thanks to My 5 technology, Mini LED can make blacks truly black again, and the colors deep, vibrant, saturated, and almost as perfect as on an OLED display. On top of that, this screen is brighter, doesn't burn in, doesn't get dimmer, and costs a lot less than OLED. The model we're testing today has a 4K resolution and 160 Hz refresh rate as well as true HDR that really works. This model also has some great features that absolutely amazed me personally. If you're looking for a monitor for gaming, watching movies, but just as importantly also for work, I assure you that for this price you won't find anything better on the market. And that's not just an opinion, it's simply a fact. This is Pavel and you're watching the Tech Maniac HD channel. Welcome. One could say that KTC is not a leading brand among display manufacturers. I won't hide the fact that when I first came across this manufacturer, I didn't expect much. Probably just another ordinary Chinese company, one of many, with no solid backing, doing cheap rebranding. And here's the first surprise. KTC Technology is a leader that has been producing screens with the latest technologies for nearly 30 years, and their products make up as much as 17% of the entire global mini LED display market. So how is it possible that hardly anyone has even heard of this brand? Well, until recently, KTC was only an OEM manufacturer, which means they hid their products behind other brands. As it turns out, when you bought high-end gaming monitors from Cooler Master, NEC, Samsung or ViewSonic, you were actually getting a KTC product. Well, that's quite a surprise. They also do a lot of work for LG and Xiaomi. So if the panel is the same, the technology is the same, then why pay more for a different brand, just for the sticker on the front? It's true, this brand won't impress your neighbors, but it's actually KTC that produces top-of-the-line equipment. But by buying directly from them, we cut out the middlemen. After all, we all like to be smart consumers who choose the best while paying as little as possible. So, a moment for our sponsor, and then we'll start the review. You can watch this video thanks to the support of the GVG Mall platform. It's a huge store specializing in keys for PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and even Google Play games. You can get practically everything here, from Steam gift cards to software like Office or Windows. If you're still struggling with that annoying message reminding you to activate, visit the link in the description right now. You'll receive the purchased key within a few minutes, and all you have to do is paste it into the activation settings. This will not only make your copy of the system legitimate, but also allow you to upgrade to Windows 11 without any problems. You can activate and assign the Office package to your account just as easily, and with the code TMHD, you'll get an additional 20% discount which can increase to 30% during various holidays and events. Stop overpaying and visit the website now. The large box looks quite enigmatic. On the front, you'll only find a large mini LED inscription in a futuristic font and the manufacturer's logo. The specification sticker is on the side, and here's a very important note. This is the M27P20 model. The P stands for the Pro version, and that makes a huge difference because KTC produces a nearly identical model that has a T instead of a P in the name, and it's much cheaper due to a lower resolution panel. On the other hand, the unit being tested is equipped with a 160 Hz screen with a resolution of 3840 na 2160, which means 4K. The numbers alone don't really show how big the difference is. However, 108 pixels per inch of the weaker model compared to 163 with the same screen size looks completely different. Even at 27 inches, the difference between QHD and 4K will be visible to the naked eye, but let's focus on unboxing the tested, better model. Neatly packed and sorted components are placed in dedicated foam compartments. The first thing that catches the eye is the 240-watt power supply. Such a powerful beast would be enough to power even an 80-inch screen. Why such a brick, you might ask? Well, this monitor hides an amazing feature that deserves a deeper discussion, but more on that later. In the box, you'll find a power cable, a 1.5-meter DisplayPort cable, and an HDMI cable, and a very thick USB-C. There's also an illustrated guide for assembling the stand, with a description of the ports and navigation shortcuts. It may be a gaming monitor by design, but thanks to the manufacturer's efforts, it already surprises you right out of the box with a professional calibration report. This way, we can be sure of proper coverage of the Adobe RGB, DCI P3, and sRGB gamuts. The calibration profiles are saved in memory and can be found in the menu under the Display Professional Modes tab. Let's remember that this type of service usually costs between 100 and 200 zlotys, and that's probably for each individual mode. Here we have several of them. Doing this at the factory saves us time and money, which is definitely commendable. We attach the massive arm to the base and screw it in. You don't need a screwdriver here. There's a ring on the back of the case, and that's where we attach the assembled arm. However, there's nothing stopping you from using your own mount or installing it on the wall. Inside the ring, there are VESA 100 by 100 mounting holes. The manufacturer's specifications state that the monitor, along with the stand, weighs 7.4 kg. According to my scale, that's almost correct, but KTC doesn't specify anywhere, at least I couldn't find it, how much the screen itself weighs without the stand, and that's actually a very important piece of information. By weighing just the stand, I can tell you that the screen itself should weigh just under 5.4 kilo. However, the solution provided by the manufacturer offers a really wide range of adjustments. We can tilt the screen towards ourselves by 5 degrees, tilt it back by 20 degrees, and the height can be adjusted within a range of 130 meters. The stand allows you to swivel the screen 45 degrees to either side, but what's really great is that you can also rotate it. It's a great feature if you use it as a second screen for video editing, especially for platforms like TikTok or YouTube Shorts. The vertical orientation of the monitor is also appreciated by programmers, and even scrolling through social media or websites on such a rotated screen offers a better experience. After all, more and more websites are being built primarily with smartphones in mind. We can rotate the monitor 90 degrees both to the right and to the left, so the decision about where the chin, meaning the thicker part of the frame, will be located depends on the user and on which side the second screen will be. And another advantage is that in this mode, the panel can be lowered all the way down, which makes it a great companion for a laptop as well. As for the appearance itself, the manufacturer didn't go for anything extravagant here, and honestly, that's a good thing. The stand is understated, and although there's a pink accent in the cable management hole, it's still just plain boring, at least from the front. Although we usually don't see what's behind the screen, here KTC has at least made an attempt at some design flair. At the top of the casing, there are embossings that form something resembling wings. Additionally, their edges are filled with strips of semi-transparent material. Together with the ring, they form the RGB lighting areas, but this has rather limited capabilities. We only have a choice of static red, green, blue colors and an option labeled as breathing in the menu. However, this isn't actually breathing, it's the flow option. The colors smoothly transition through the entire palette on their own. The glow of light behind the monitor, which is placed right next to the wall, is a nice addition and works better than just the screen shining directly into our eyes in a dark room. Unfortunately, the idea's potential here is pretty much wasted. You can't display pure white, and you can forget about effects like Philips Ambilight technology. Besides, the brightness is too low anyway to provide any real effect for the user. If you have the monitor with its back facing the room, it's okay, it does create some effect, but honestly, it's just a bit of a gimmick. From my point of view, it's understandable that nowadays, even the best screen with the best price to performance and quality ratio simply won't sell as well without LEDs as one that has them. Fortunately, you can see that the manufacturer didn't spend a fortune on this, so you don't really have to pay extra for such a gimmick. The manufacturer probably just wanted to be included in the group of displays that qualify as gaming monitors, and without RGB that would have been much harder. Otherwise it might have gone unnoticed, so I can understand and forgive that. because it's really a tough market and it's hard to break through. Now let's talk about something more useful, namely the impressive number of ports that KTC has included here. Starting from the left, we see a round power connector, two USB Type-A 3.0 ports, a USB Type-B input. The next port is also USB, but Type-C, which we'll come back to in just a moment. There's also one DisplayPort, 1.4 connector, and two HDMI 2.1 ports. It's worth noting here that only newer graphics cards or laptops support the faster connections, which in this case means ports capable of delivering 4K resolution at a 160Hz refresh rate. But don't worry, the DisplayPort connector already handles this and will easily transmit 4K at full 10-bit color depth. At the end, there's also a round 3.5mm headphone jack, and since we're still talking about connectors, we now need to discuss the USB-C port itself because it has many functions. One of them is power delivery. This way you can quickly charge smartphones but also a laptop. Through this small port, any compatible device with power delivery, like my laptop for example, can draw up to 90 W, and that's one of the reasons why KTC had to include such a powerful power supply with the monitor. But that's not all. This single cable also transmits the image, and that's in full 4K at 160Hz and 10 bits. No HDMI, no DisplayPort 2, not even a power supply for the laptop is needed in this case. If today you only have a desktop computer, who knows, maybe in the future you'll be tempted by a nice, more powerful laptop for work or gaming while traveling. You just sit in front of the monitor, plug in a single cable, and that's it. Although it's worth adding here that I tried to achieve the same effect with my regular inexpensive USB cables, and yes, charging worked, but the image wasn't transmitted. However, with the original cable everything works as it should. But what if I told you it could get even better? Well, this monitor supports KVM technology. It supports input devices, meaning your keyboard and mouse. This way, you just need to plug your devices or their wireless receivers into the monitor's USB ports. After switching the video source, the active device is also connected to the mouse and keyboard. For me, this is absolutely beautiful. The desktop is connected to the monitor, as usual, but for work I use a laptop. All you need to do is plug the thing in with one cable and bam! I already have 3 screens for work, plus a keyboard and a more comfortable mouse. When I need to leave, I literally unplug the cable in 2 seconds and go, and the laptop is fully charged. You might have seen Compaq or Dell docking stations before, and around the turn of the millennium they were a real hit. Even today they're still used in many places. Here I would say it's actually a much better solution. You might think, okay, this laptop is kind of high-end, so it has some fancy features and will work well with a modern monitor. It just so happens that my partner works from home, and I once tried to connect her rather old work laptop to a 4K monitor. Unfortunately, the old and slow HDMI only allows for 30 frames per second at that resolution, and believe me, when you're working through a virtual machine at 30 frames per second, you feel like you're about to throw up, and it's just not doable. On the other hand, a higher resolution and a bigger screen would definitely speed up her work. So if not through HDMI, I thought, well, it's worth a try. So I connected the USB-C and to my surprise the laptop started charging and displayed the image on the monitor. Honestly, I didn't even expect it to work at all, but the best part is that the image is finally being transmitted in 4K and at 60 Hz. Unfortunately, on a laptop that doesn't even have a dedicated graphics card, it would be hard to expect 160 Hz, but at least now you can actually work. This one little cable also passes through my keyboard and mouse. So even if you don't have a laptop or a device like the Steam Deck or Asus ROG Ally today, who knows what the future will bring. With such devices, this functionality will be worth its weight in gold for you. Charging 4K at 160 Hz in 10-bit with sound, with HDR, and with mouse and keyboard all through a single cable. It's just a dream come true. I know that probably most users will only use this port to charge their smartphone, but the rest will never go back to a screen without this kind of functionality. Compared to that, HDMI seems like it's from the Stone Age. The KTC monitor is also equipped with 2-watt downward-facing stereo speakers. However, as you might expect, the sound from them is very flat, and even an average laptop can sound better, so I recommend using them only in emergency situations. The bezels on this model aren't the smallest, but they're quite acceptable. Only the chin is a bit wider, but it houses the logo and an LED indicator. You now know what you can hook up to this monitor and how, but the most important part is next. The IPS panel boasts a new type of backlighting known as Mini LED. In this model, as many as 2,304 of these small LEDs are used, grouped into 570 zones. The ability to locally dim individual zones significantly improves blacks, increases contrast, and makes HDR content look even better. Mini LED panels provide more effective brightness management, and the colors become more realistic and richer. M27P20 is compliant with the Display HDR 1000 standard. The screen is capable of reaching a real brightness level of 1000 nits and up to 600 nits without active HDR. However, for Windows to work properly with an HDR screen, it is necessary to install an additional but free app from Microsoft. This way, after completing the full configuration, a special color profile will be saved in the settings, and thanks to it, the image will be displayed correctly. It's hard to find this information, and many people use the screen with the system's default settings, but to make full use of it, we definitely should go through this procedure. The on-screen menu lets you adjust local dimming intensity. See for yourselves what Mini LED technology actually offers in a few examples, but to give you some reference, I placed a regular, smaller LCD monitor next to it. This Dell belongs to the so-called junk tier and costs just a few $100. Of course, this isn't a fair comparison, but I put them side by side only because even worse monitors are often included in sets from Allegro, Morale, or other stores like XCOM, and people use them for many years without realizing what they're missing. And after all, the monitor is the most important element when using a computer. So here we have a sample animated movie. It's bright. The strong, intense colors really pop, at least on one of the monitors. This is still a very favorable situation for the LED monitor. Yes, that 24-inch Dell on the left has LED backlighting since it's actually quite a new monitor. On the other hand, the one being tested on the right uses Mini LED technology, but local dimming is still turned off. From the menu, I turn on the medium level of local dimming, and as we can see, the screen dimmed a bit, but where it should be darker, it's definitely darker. The next higher level of dimming isn't as drastic, but the contrast increases even more. Now let's see how HDR content looks on both screens. Here, the difference is just huge, even without zone dimming. But let's turn on the local dimming technology, and man, there's just no comparison at all. It doesn't matter if it's in movies or games, but after an experience like this, I just don't want to look at the terrible looking shadows and blacks on a regular monitor. Not to mention the colors. Remember, both have IPS panels, but the backlighting is different. On the left, it's LED. On the right, it's Mini LED. It may seem like a small detail, just something in the technical specs, but as you can see, it makes a huge difference. The tested monitor won't provide blacks as deep as OLED, but on the other hand, it's much cheaper and it won't suffer from burn-in. But Mini LED isn't free from flaws. The problem with this technology is blooming. It occurs in areas where high brightness mixes with black on the screen. As I mentioned, the tested monitor has 576 dimming zones, and for this budget, that's more than you can expect, but still not enough for the blooming effect to be unnoticeable to the naked eye. Of course, it depends on what's being displayed on the screen at the moment and on minor settings. What you're seeing right now is absolutely the worst case scenario and an absolute extreme for this technology. That is, deep black with a white moving object on it. Where there's only black, that zone is turned off and it looks great. But if a bright object is displayed over another zone at the same time, it has to be lit up, and then what is black is no longer truly black, so we see a subtle glowing halo around the objects. You can see this perfectly in the example from the game Assassin's Creed Valhalla. You might even think that this subtle glow is an intentional effect, but it's just blooming. In practice, however, we won't experience too many such extreme situations, although of course it depends on what we're watching. But if we're not actively looking for the halo effect, it often goes unnoticed. On the other hand, I absolutely can't complain about the color reproduction. According to the specifications, this KTC model offers 118% of the DCI-P3 gamut and 160% of the sRGB gamut. So it's perfect for graphic work, photo editing, or video editing. The panel is actually an 8-bit panel with FRC function, which means our eyes perceive it as full 10-bit color. Thanks to this trick, the panel can cost much less. I also checked the viewing angles, and they are actually very good, but I noticed a strange, almost three-dimensional effect on the side edges. It looks as if the panel is wrapping underneath, kind of like in Samsung's Edge series phones. It's hard to describe in words, but the recording will help you understand it better. Not that it's particularly annoying, it's just a casual observation. Now, let's move on to the topic of gaming. As a gamer, you definitely appreciate a high refresh rate, but at the same time, you care about support for technologies like G-Sync or FreeSync. 160Hz works as it should here, provided you turn off the aforementioned synchronization technologies. If you enable these menu features, the refresh rate will automatically drop to 144 Hz. And honestly, that doesn't bother me the most. Let's be real, losing 16 Hz isn't exactly a tragedy. It's better to play at 144 Hz without screen tearing. I have no doubt about that. However, what does bother me is that after activating the G-Sync FreeSync option, you can't enable local dimming. HDR is there, it works, but local dimming, as you can see in the menu, remains grayed out with no way to enable it, and I really wish that weren't the case. As you'd expect from a gaming screen, here we can adjust overdrive to reduce ghosting. If you don't know what ghosting is, it's a kind of trail behind fast-moving objects. The manufacturer set it to low by default, and it seems to be the best setting overall. And what can we say about the menu? You may notice that the T here has taken on a futuristic form, which gives the product a distinctly gaming look. However, it's not the appearance that's important here, but its capabilities. You activate and control it using a small joystick located on the back of the case. After a few minutes of use, operating the joystick becomes very intuitive and definitely more convenient than separate buttons. The menu itself isn't stupid and definitely deserves praise. What I really like here is the fact that at any time, whether you're on the desktop or in a game, you can check the current resolution and find out if features like HDR along with G-Sync or FreeSync are currently active. On the right, there's also a bar that shows the current refresh rate. However, this is not an active FPS counter, it simply shows the refresh rate set in the system, but don't worry, those kinds of features are here too. You just need to go to the Game Assist subcategory and activate the FPS counter, which is the frame rate counter. However, for me, it doesn't work very accurately. Maybe an update will help. Sometimes adding a crosshair can also be useful. It's a helpful feature for FPS games. For example, in CSGO, sniper rifles obviously have scopes, but when you're not aiming and just walking around the map with them, there's no crosshair at all. When you want to hit what's called a no-scope, you're basically doing it blindly. But if you activate a crosshair on your monitor, you won't be doing it blindly anymore. As for the other menu elements, they're divided into 6 tabs. In the display section, you can edit the basic image parameters such as brightness, contrast, black level, or sharpness. The manufacturer has also prepared presets for specific tasks, such as watching movies, photo editing, or dedicated profiles for RTS and FPS games. In the Color tab, the most interesting option is Low Blue Light. Here, we have 4 levels of blue light reduction. We've already gone through some of the other options, and the rest don't require any special explanation. It's only worth adding that you can adjust the menu position to your liking. And the fact that the KTC monitor is advanced enough that we also have access to possible firmware updates. And I suppose it's worth checking from time to time if there's a new update available. Who knows, since what bothers me the most here is the inability to activate local dimming when G-Sync is enabled. Maybe it's something that can be fixed with a simple update. If that's the case, I'll be in 7th heaven. Besides that, this monitor pleasantly surprised me, and I can confidently recommend it to anyone currently looking to buy one. Links to the current price are in the description below. If you enjoyed this material, be sure to visit my website www.techmaniacad.pl. Thanks to the intuitive menu, you'll definitely find more inspiring content there. See you in the next one.